I saw this push stick design in an out-of-print magazine called Shop Notes, and I thought, man, that looks really cool. I'd love to make one of those to make thin strips on the table saw. So I tried it, and it scared me because I almost got a kickback based on their design. I did not feel safe using it. However, I made a few very minor modifications to it, and now I think it works much better. Let me show you how to make it. So I've got some 1/4-inch plywood here. This has an MDF core, which makes it a lot more stable than just regular plywood. It's also, it should cut a little better. That's what I'm gonna use for the sides of this push stick. You can use hardboard, of course. You can actually use 1/4-inch plywood if you want. Just have some sharp blades so it doesn't fray on you. You're gonna need 2 pieces, and you're gonna make them as long as you want, really. I'm gonna make mine about probably 6 or 8 inches long. You want them as tall as the fence, and then we'll make a top piece to sit on top. I messed up already. They need to be taller than the fence. Back to the drawing board. I've got a scrap piece of maple that I'm gonna use for the top piece, and it's got a little boogering on there on the end, so I'm gonna go ahead and use my crosscut sled to square all this up, and then we'll start working with it. Again, you can use any type of wood you want. I just chose hardwood because I had this scrap piece on hand. Next thing we need to do is rip this to the exact width of our table saw fence. For my fence, it's gonna be 4 1/16 of an inch. And here you see me sneaking up on that cut just to make sure I get that perfect fit. I'm just using a scrap piece on each side of the fence to make sure that it's perfectly flush with both sides of the fence. Now what we gotta do is cut our riser pieces. I'm just gonna measure from the top of the table up to the top of this board, which is where I messed up earlier because I didn't take that into account. This is 3.5 inches exactly for me. I like to cut mine a little long and then trim them up over the table saw to make sure I got 2 square edges. Now I'm just gonna take it over to the miter saw and cut these about 7 inches long. There's no rocket science here. You can make these as long or as short as you feel comfortable, but I just winging it here, thought 7 inches sounded good. All right, now we gotta cut our notches so that we'll have something to push with on a push stick, right? So we know we got this piece here and this piece here. Well, the right side of the fence doesn't need anything. It's just gonna be gliding on the fence. The left side, however, we're gonna put notches on here. I'm gonna go in 1/4-inch increments. I use a lot of 3/4 stock, 1/2 inch stock, and of course 1/4 inch. Go half, 1, 1.5. All right, I have a bandsaw. I'm just gonna knock these 3 little notches out really quick, but you can also use a jigsaw for this purpose if you don't have a bandsaw. I've got an 1.25 inch dowel that I'm gonna put right there for a handle to push with. I'm gonna drill a hole to inset this in. We'll glue it in there. All I've done is measured over about 2 and just over 2 inches, like 2 1/32, because this is just barely wider than 4 inches for my fence. And then I measured down 2 1/4 because I feel like that'll give me enough handhold and palm or the flat part of my hand there to have a rest. Let's drill a hole. I don't want to drill it all the way through, but I do want it to be deep enough that it's going to give a good hold for that handle. I couldn't find my countersink bit small enough, so I just improvised and used a Phillips head driver bit and made a countersink. All right, test fit. Make sure that when you put this together that those teeth are on the left side and to the front. Nice. Nice and smooth. I think it's gonna work good. Let's try it. First, I want to just go ahead and put a little Outlaws board butter on there. It'll just give it a nice protective finish, and then it'll also help it glide smoother on the fence. I also use Blaster dry lube on my tabletop and the side of the fence to help everything slide on those. Let's see if this thing works like it should. Because we have this thing stair-stepped, then the 1/4 inch will work back here, and then we got 1/2 and then 3/4. You can make those as many as you want, or you could actually flip it around if you wanted to put some teeth on this side to be more than 3/4. So like 1, 1.5, something like that. But typically when you're working with thin stock, it's usually, or when you're ripping thin pieces, it's usually skinnier pieces, less thick. Let's see how it works. Making a few cuts with that, it works really well as far as making thin strips out of smaller pieces. And one thing I will say is having all the pressure back here makes me just a little nervous. I feel like it needs to be a little more pressure all the way across that. Otherwise, if you're going to push from back here, then I would use something to hold it until it gets fairly close to the blade, and then you can push it on through. I'm gonna be honest, the thing's scaring the crap out of me. I thought it was gonna be all right, but it doesn't feel like it has a lot of control. It's bothering me quite a bit. I'm gonna extend these a little more, maybe an inch each, and see if we can make it better. Version 3.0, because 1.0 was way too small. I thought, yikes, I was a little, I was afraid it was gonna kick back. 2.0, I extended them out to 1 inch grooves each, and still felt that way. Now we're at 2 inches each on each of those supports, so we're gonna see if that makes it feel any better. I still believe that I'm going to need to at least hold against that until the cut starts anyway. That feels a million times better. That felt safer. Those first two, man, I'm telling you, they did not feel safe. Just don't trust everything you read in an old magazine, I guess is the moral of today's story. Oh yeah, I like that much better. You can even extend this piece out and make it longer, and you'll give it even more support, but at 2 inches, if you're just ripping small strips for various projects, this is gonna work really good for you. The original design, I just didn't agree with. Obviously, this will not replace one of my favorite push blocks, the gripper. I like this one. It's good for thin strips too, but if you're on a budget, like I was when I first started out, I couldn't afford the 55 or 60 bucks this would cost. However, I could have made one of these out of scrap wood had I known how to do that. But if you'd rather just pick up a gripper and buy one of those, I can get you 10% off if you go to taytools.com, use the code 731microjig10, save 10% on any microjig product using that code. Mike's a great guy, my neighbor to the north there in Missouri, small family-owned business. It's a great way to support that. If you like this project, you'll love my table saw sled video. Click that box right there, see how to make an awesome table saw sled. Click in the box, get you the big old virtual fist bump. Also, another one of my favorite projects right there. Just noticed I cut my gripper.